My grandson asked, "Grandma, why don't you have a bed?" My son said, "She doesn't need one." But the judge disagreed. I woke up to the sting of cold cement pushing through the thin mattress beneath my back. At 76 years old, the ache settled into my bones before my eyes even opened. The basement smelled of damp laundry and old paint, the kind of air that clings to your skin and reminds you that you are living somewhere you were never meant to live. I pulled the blanket closer, though it barely did anything against the winter crawl seeping through the concrete walls. The door swung open without warning. Hannah's silhouette stood at the top of the stairs, her voice slicing through the stillness. "Get up, old woman. You're blocking the laundry." I pushed myself upright slowly, careful not to show how the pain traveled down my spine. Jason stood behind her, scrolling on his phone, not even glancing my way. "You should be grateful we let you stay here at all," he muttered, as if reciting a line he had practiced. Before I could gather my balance, little footsteps echoed down the stairs. Oliver's bright face appeared, innocent and confused. His eyes scanned the basement, the exposed pipes, the cold concrete, the heap of folded towels beside my mattress, and then fixed on the spot where my bed should have been. "Grandma, why don't you have a bed?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Jason answered for me, his tone sharp and careless. "Because she doesn't need one. Beds are for family. She's just an old obligation." Hannah crossed her arms, her lips curling. "If she wants comfort, she should have thought about that before ruining our lives." I felt the words hit me harder than the winter drafts. Ruining their lives. That was the story they liked to tell. It made it easier for them to step over me, speak through me, and redefine me as something disposable. Oliver turned to me again, waiting for an explanation. I smiled at him gently because a child should never bear the weight of adult cruelty. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I whispered. But inside, I folded in on myself like a paper left out in the rain. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. "Thank you so much. Keep listening." Jason clapped his hands once. "Come on, Ollie. Grandma has chores. We have real things to do." Real things. As if my days weren't spent lifting, cooking, folding, scrubbing, all without a thank you. I did everything they asked. Watched Oliver for free, cooked every meal, cleaned the house, kept quiet when guests came over, and disappeared into the basement when my presence wasn't convenient. My life had become a schedule built around their comfort. Night came quickly, and the house settled into its usual hush. I lay on my side, knees drawn up, my fingers tucked beneath my cheek for warmth. My blanket slid off the mattress twice, and I pulled it back with trembling hands. I stared into the dark, listening to the muffled voices drifting down from the living room above me. Then I heard Jason's voice, clear and careless, as if he were talking about moving a piece of furniture. "When she dies, we'll finally have space for a real home office." A burst of laughter followed Hannah's laugh, sharp and satisfied. I kept my eyes open, though the dark pressed against them. Not yet. Back then, I owned a tiny bakery with peeling blue paint and a bell on the door that jingled every time someone walked in. Jason grew up behind that counter, doing homework between trays of rising dough. I raised him alone after his father left, pouring every dollar I made into keeping us afloat. We did not have much, but the place smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, and somehow that made the world feel softer. That was where I met Thomas. He came in every Friday at 7:30 sharp for a slice of pecan pie, always pretending it was for a friend at work, until he finally admitted he hated sharing. He was kind, patient, the kind of man who wiped flour off my cheek without making me feel embarrassed. When we married years later, the bakery customers joked that they had seen it coming long before we did. Thomas had big ideas, jars of homemade sauces, pickled vegetables, old Southern recipes turned into a local brand. I wrote the recipes, tested each batch myself, registered the trademark, and filed the LLC under my name. Not because I wanted control, but because Thomas hated paperwork, and Jason, at the time, was drowning in online gambling debt. He could not be trusted with a library card, let alone a business license. But Jason believed the world owed him inheritance by default. I once overheard him telling his college friends, loud and confident, "When Dad dies, the company will be mine. That's just how it works." As if businesses passed through bloodlines instead of sweat. When he came to me asking for $10,000 for a startup, some sort of crypto marketing app thing that made no sense even to him, I told him no. Not because I wanted to keep him small, but because I had spent months quietly paying off loan sharks who kept calling the bakery, asking for my promising young entrepreneur. And because I had found tax forms in his backpack that he had tried to falsify, erasing numbers with correction fluid like a teenager cheating on homework. He did not hear the protection in my refusal. Only insult. "You never believed in me," he shouted. "You'd rather protect your stupid recipes than your own son." I remember standing in the doorway, holding a stack of laundry, feeling the words slice more deeply than he would ever understand. Hannah, then just his new girlfriend, leaned in like a whisper of poison. "Your mom is threatened by your success," she told him. "She wants you small so she can be the hero forever." It was impressive, really, how quickly she learned which wounds to press. From then on, Jason rewrote history. He told anyone who would listen that I had destroyed his future, that I hoarded money, that I refused to support him because I loved power more than family. The truth did not matter. Narrative did. What he never told Hannah, what he never honored, was that I sold my bakery to pay for his college tuition. Every cupcake, every loaf of bread, every early morning and burned fingertip turned into tuition bills so he could have a life beyond that little shop. But Hannah dismissed it with a flick of her hand. That was her job as a mother. She did the bare minimum. The bare minimum. As if sacrificing the only dream I ever built with my own two hands was a footnote in a manual somewhere titled Basic Parenting. When Thomas died, everything shifted. The grief had barely settled in the walls when Jason walked into the office, picked up the framed photo of the first jar we ever sold, and smirked like someone claiming a prize. "Now I'll do things my way," he said, "and she's either with us or in our way." I should have fought. I should have reminded him whose name was on every legal document. But grief is a heavy thing, and I was still learning how to breathe without Thomas beside me. I thought Jason just needed time. I thought Hannah would soften with age. I thought love would win. I was wrong. They grew into the story they had created about me, a selfish woman, a controlling mother, a gatekeeper who hoarded a company built for the family. They never saw that Thomas had asked me, in one of his last conversations, to protect the business from greedy hands. "Keep it safe," he whispered. "Do not let ambition ruin what we built." I promised him I would, but I never imagined the greedy hands would belong to his own son. Some nights, after the chores were done and the house above me went quiet, I would sit with Thomas's photo on my lap and whisper, "You told me to protect the company from those who would take advantage. But how do I protect it when the ones trying to take it are our own children?" The basement never answered. It just held the weight of everything I never said aloud. After Thomas's funeral, the house felt hollow in ways I could not name, but Jason filled the emptiness quickly. He arrived 3 weeks later with boxes stacked in the truck bed and said, "Mom should not be alone." The words sounded tender, but the tone was rehearsed, almost managerial. Hannah followed behind him, carrying decorative pillows and a clipboard as if she were moving into a show home she intended to redesign from the foundation up. At first, I believed them. I believed their kindness was real. I believed grief made us softer, not sharper. They told me to take the master bedroom because it was better for my joints, but within 2 months, Hannah said she needed that room for the baby she was not yet pregnant with. So I moved willingly into the smaller room near the stairs. A few months later, Jason said he needed that space for a home office because investors like a professional backdrop. That time I hesitated, but not long. I packed my things and walked them down the steps to the basement myself. I thought it was temporary. I thought love would return. They placed my mattress in the far corner, away from the light. The pipes overhead groaned every time someone flushed upstairs. The concrete floor stayed cold no matter how many blankets I layered beneath me. But Jason smiled at me as if this were a reasonable compromise. "You still have a roof," he said. "Plenty of families do worse for their elderly." What made it sting deeper was the king-size bed he bought for the guest room upstairs, bought the same week he told me there was no budget to replace my worn-down mattress. Hannah had run her hand across the new comforter and laughed. Guests need to see the good side of the family. She is the side we hide. She said it casually, almost playfully, but Jason nodded in agreement, and that was when I understood. This was not temporary. This was placement, classification. I kept quiet. I made breakfast every morning. I watched Oliver before and after school. I vacuumed, folded laundry, and stayed out of the way, because that was what they preferred, a mother who blended into the foundation like an old beam, holding up a house that no longer remembered it needed her. The night of the party was when everything shifted. Hannah had invited Jason's friends, several co-workers, and a potential investor whose smile looked expensive. I heard the music thumping through the basement ceiling and carried up a tray of small pastries I had baked that morning, pecan bites Thomas once called perfect. I came up the stairs slowly, careful not to interrupt the flow of conversation, but Hannah saw me before I reached the kitchen. She stepped in front of me, lips curled in a smile too bright to be warm. "These are not up to our brand standard," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Take them back downstairs." My hands tightened on the tray, not in defiance, but to mask the shaking. A woman in a sequin blazer asked gently, "Where does your mom stay now?" Before I could speak, Hannah laughed a short, sharp laugh. "In the basement? On a mattress. Old things go where old things belong." The laughter that followed was not loud, but it was enough to blur the edges of the room for a moment. I looked at Jason, hoping for even the slightest discomfort. A crack in the facade, a sliver of sonhood left in him. But he only shrugged and said, "We feed her. That is more than what some people would do." The investor's face shifted, confusion mixing with discomfort. He leaned toward Jason and asked quietly, "Didn't she run the original recipes?" Jason waved the question away. "She just cooked. The real business? That is all me now." A lie spoken with confidence becomes a story, and a story told often enough becomes truth to those who benefit from it. Oliver stood behind the kitchen island, his small hands gripping the counter. His eyes were glossy, his lips pressed tight, as if he understood more than any child should. He whispered, "Grandma, can I have one?" But Hannah shot him a look that froze him where he stood. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. The words drifted through my mind, like a reminder that some people somewhere still believed truth mattered. I backed away, inch by inch, holding the tray like a shield I knew could not protect me. When I reached the basement door, I heard someone upstairs say, "She looks so small." Another replied, "Age does that." But age had nothing to do with the shrinking. Cruelty does that. Rewriting history does that. When I returned to the concrete floor, I set the tray beside my mattress and lowered myself carefully. I tasted one pastry. It was perfect, the kind Thomas would have smiled at. I looked up at the unfinished ceiling, the wood beams, the dangling wires, the echoes of footsteps above me, and whispered, "They use the recipes to make themselves rich, and then they bury me on the coldest floor of the house." But the basement did not swallow me. It sharpened me. That night, long after the party ended and the footsteps upstairs quieted to the rhythm of a house that no longer welcomed me, I lay awake on the thin mattress, staring at the shadows stretching across the concrete. I heard the door creak softly, and Oliver slipped inside holding a plate wrapped in foil. He whispered so gently it nearly broke me. "Grandma, I saved these for you." He set the pastries down and then hesitated, shifting from foot to foot the way children do when they are wrestling with something heavy. "Grandma," he said quietly, "why does Dad get mad when I say you made the first sauces?" The question did not hurt. It opened something I had tucked away so deeply I had forgotten it breathed. I sat up slowly, brushing crumbs from my lap, and whispered, "Because some truths make people uncomfortable." But after he left, his question echoed louder. I realized I had never looked through the business papers since Thomas died. Back then, grief made paperwork feel unbearable. I let Jason handle it because I thought he was grieving too. I mistook distance for maturity and silence for trust. I had assumed Jason handled everything out of necessity, not ambition. I had assumed good faith where none had existed. The realization chilled me more than the winter air seeping through the basement walls. When the house finally slept, I crept upstairs, careful not to let the stairs creak. I moved through the hallway like a ghost, retracing familiar steps, and opened the storage closet at the end. Dust coated the boxes, memories sealed in cardboard. And there it was, the box labeled "Old Papers" in Thomas's handwriting. My hands trembled as I dragged it out and sat on the floor with my legs crossed, just like I used to when I helped him sort receipts years ago. Inside were documents that should never have been forgotten. The original LLC registration for our small food company, listing my name as managing member, the trademark certificate for Sonia's Table, my handwriting on the application still crisp and earnest, the registered recipe sheets stamped and approved, each one bearing the formula I created from scratch, a stack of photographs Thomas and I smiling behind our first farmers market booth, holding jars like proud parents. I touched each image gently, as though afraid it would dissolve under the weight of time. I whispered to the silence, "He promised me none of this would be erased." Under the stack of papers was something I had forgotten entirely, the small note Thomas wrote in his notebook the year we filed the barcode system. He had scribbled, "Hidden marker, S's birthday MMDD encoded." I remembered him smiling as he showed me. "If anyone ever tries to copy us," he said, "the truth will still be in the code. Even if they change the label, the core will always be ours." My heart began pounding. If that signature was still embedded, then no matter what Jason redesigned, the internal structure would still lead back to me. I went to the kitchen, opening cabinet after cabinet until I found one of Jason's new jars, Harrington Harvest 44. Sleek, modern, arrogant. I turned it over in my hand and scanned the QR code with my phone. The screen blinked, loaded, and displayed the back-end metadata. And there it was, the familiar structure, the marker Thomas left behind, the numbers of my birth date woven silently through the internal pattern. Not erased, not replaced, just hidden beneath a prettier font and a colder color palette. My breath caught. I compared it with the original documents I brought upstairs. Line by line, code by code, everything matched. Jason had changed the design, but he had never altered the foundation because he did not know it existed. He had built his empire on a skeleton he thought was dead. For the first time in years, anger did not frighten me. It steadied me. I whispered, "You thought you erased me from the label, but you forgot the one thing your father never did. The core was mine. The company is still mine." I gathered the documents into a neat stack, pressing each corner flat, and tucked them under my arm. For a moment, I looked around the kitchen. This had once been a warm room, a place where Thomas danced with me barefoot on Sunday mornings. Now it was filled with Hannah's pristine appliances and Jason's emptiness. But neither of them owned what truly mattered. When I returned to the basement, I did not lie down. I placed the documents in a folder and set it on the table where my sewing machine once sat. My hands no longer shook. My breath no longer trembled. I took my phone and searched for a number I had not dialed in years, a law firm that handled intellectual property and business disputes. For the first time since Thomas died, I called someone without asking permission, without fear of being told I misunderstood, without Jason filtering my voice through his narrative. When the receptionist answered, I said, "My name is Sonia Harrington. I need to speak with an attorney about intellectual property ownership. It concerns a brand built on my work." The words felt solid, anchored. After I hung up, I looked at the documents again. So much of my life had been buried. But nothing buried stays forgotten forever. Not when the truth has a code. Not when the core still carries your name. Tomorrow, I would meet with a lawyer. Tonight, I finally slept not as a forgotten woman on a concrete floor, but as someone who had found the first thread leading her back to herself. I arrived at the law office early, long before the winter sun managed to lift itself above the skyline. My hands were cold, but not from the air. They trembled in a way I had not felt since I stood beside Thomas on the day we filed our first business license. Only this time, I was standing alone, not as someone's wife, not as someone's mother, but as someone finally stepping into her own truth. The receptionist led me down a hallway to a small conference room where a young woman in a navy suit sat reviewing a tablet. She stood as soon as she saw me. "Mrs. Harrington? I am Vanessa Trent. It is very nice to meet you." I nodded, trying to quiet the nerves dancing in my chest. "Please," she said gently, "tell me everything from the beginning." And so I did. I told her about Thomas, about our recipes, about the kitchen where we stayed up late perfecting the tastes of our childhood. I told her about the trademarks, the original LLC, the copyrights with my handwriting still visible on the forms. I explained how Jason had rebranded the company, taken credit for what he never created, and pushed me into the basement as though I were a leftover ingredient he wished he could throw away. Then I showed her the documents I found, one by one, arranged neatly across the table the same way I had done in my kitchen the night before. Finally, I handed her the photo of the QR code metadata on Jason's new product. "That," I said quietly, "is my birthday encoded. Thomas added it years ago. For authenticity." Vanessa studied the papers carefully, tapping her pen against the table in a slow, deliberate rhythm. For a moment, she did not speak. Then she looked up with a calm certainty that startled me. "Mrs. Harrington," she said, "this is not just a family dispute. This is a textbook case of intellectual property violation." My breath stalled. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Absolutely." Her voice sharpened with professional confidence. "You are the original creator. You are the registered trademark owner. You filed the copyrights. There is no record of you transferring ownership to your son, nor any licensing agreement allowing him to use your work. Legally, everything he produces under this brand is unauthorized." I felt something loosen in my chest, something I had carried for so long I had forgotten it had weight. She continued, "Let me verify one thing." She tapped her tablet, typing quickly. After a few seconds, she turned the screen toward me. "Federal records," she said. "Here is the business listing. Your name is still the active owner of the original brand." She scrolled again. "And here your recipe copyright. Still active, still yours." I stared at the screen. My name looked strange there, important in a way I had not allowed myself to feel for years. I whispered, "Jason told everyone he built the business." "He may have built a facade," Vanessa replied, "but the foundation is yours. And the law recognizes the foundation." Vanessa leaned forward. "Mrs. Harrington, if you choose to pursue this, you can demand that he immediately stop selling all products derived from your intellectual property. You can request damages. You can reclaim the entire brand. Legally, you are the rightful owner." My throat tightened. "I do not want to destroy my son." Vanessa held my gaze with a firmness that did not feel cruel, only honest. "You are not destroying him. His greed already did that. You are simply naming the truth he hoped would stay buried." I looked down at my hands, folded tightly in my lap. "I never wanted a fight. Most people do not," she said softly. "But you deserve to reclaim what is yours. This is not revenge. This is restoration." She laid out the next steps. First, a cease and desist letter ordering Jason to halt production immediately. If he refused, we would proceed to court. Vanessa spoke calmly, methodically, but every word lit a spark I had forgotten lived inside me. "Are you prepared to move forward?" she asked. I hesitated, but only for a breath. Then I reached for the pen on the table. My hand hovered for a moment above the authorization document. I thought of the basement, the concrete, the mattress, the way Jason looked at me as if I were nothing but a burden he regretted inheriting. I thought of how he gambled with everything I sacrificed for him, how he reduced my life's work to a footnote he wished he could erase. I signed, slowly, clearly. The ink did not shake. When I set the pen down, I felt taller, stronger, steadier. "My son gambled my life away to give me the basement," I said quietly. "So now I will gamble the company to give myself justice." Vanessa nodded. "Then let us begin." And for the first time in many years, I felt the ground beneath me shift, not from loss, but from reclamation. When the cease and desist letter arrived, it came in a thick white envelope with Vanessa's name printed cleanly across the top. I knew the moment Jason found it because the entire house vibrated with his voice. "This is a joke," he shouted from the kitchen. "Some lawyer is manipulating her. She is old. She does not understand what she is signing." Hannah snapped right back. "Then we will tell the judge she is senile. Nobody listens to an old basement rat pretending she remembers business papers from 30 years ago." I heard all of it from downstairs as I folded laundry that did not belong to me. Something in me tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. A tree grows tallest right before the chainsaw arrives. Jason spent the entire day pacing, cursing, and ripping open cabinets like they were responsible for his downfall. He kept saying the same sentence over and over. "She is not taking this company away from me. I built it, me." But his voice had a shake in it he could not hide. The following evening, Hannah hosted a dinner for a major investor named Mr. Collins, a tall man with a calm face and a reputation for sniffing out brand instability before anyone else did. Hannah made it clear I was not to be seen. "Stay downstairs," she said. "We cannot have you wandering around like some mascot of the past." But she still expected dinner on the table. So I spent the afternoon cooking in silence while she bragged upstairs about her family-run success story. As I stirred the sauce in an old pot, the one I had used back when the recipes were still mine in every sense, I heard light footsteps behind me. Oliver had come downstairs again. His face was soft, worried. "Grandma," he whispered, "why is Dad angry about the papers you found? He said you are mistaken. But you never look mistaken." I put a hand on his cheek. "Sometimes people are afraid of the truth, sweetheart, even when the truth is very simple." He nodded like he understood more than a boy his age should. A few minutes later, a heavier pair of steps came down the stairs. I assumed it was Hannah coming to scold me again, but instead it was Mr. Collins. He looked surprised to see me there, kneeling beside the old pot. "Forgive me," he said gently. "I thought this room was storage." There was a brief flicker in his expression, as if something about my presence fit a puzzle he had seen before, but never named out loud. "I did not realize someone was working here." I stood slowly. "I am always working here," I said. He smiled politely, but then his eyes fell on the pot I was scrubbing. "That recipe," he said almost casually, "is it not the original one that started this whole brand?" Before I could answer, Hannah appeared out of nowhere, sliding between us like a knife. "She is just our family help," she said quickly. "She gets confused and tells stories sometimes. Do not let her distract you." Mr. Collins looked at her strangely, but he did not push. Yet I could see it in his eyes, something had unsettled him. At the dinner table, Jason was all charm. He poured wine, gave rehearsed smiles, and said the line he always used when he wanted to sound self-made. "We built this brand from scratch. No baggage, no drama, just clean growth." I stood in the doorway for a moment, unnoticed, listening. That was when Jason's phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. He glanced down, annoyed until he saw the sender, his face drained. Even from where I stood, I recognized Vanessa's name glowing bright across the screen. He swiped the notification open, and for the first time in years, I watched my son lose the mask he had worn since the day Thomas died. The email was not just sent to him, it was copied directly to Mr. Collins. I had asked Vanessa to include him. She had agreed without hesitation. Collins's phone buzzed a moment later. His brows tightened as he read the attachments. The original trademarks, the copyright filings, the LLC registration, the encoded QR data showing my birthday embedded in the formula, and finally, an old photograph of Thomas and me holding up our first jars at the farmer's market. The entire table went silent. Slowly, deliberately, Collins set his phone down and turned his eyes toward Jason. "You told me," he said quietly, "that this brand came with no legal complications." Jason swallowed, hard. "My mother is confused," he blurted. "She imagines she owns things she does not. We have been caring for her out of charity." Hannah let out a brittle laugh. "Old people forget what is theirs all the time. We have been patient with her." Collins leaned back, studying them both with growing disgust. "From where I am standing," he said, "it looks like she is the one supporting you." He pushed his chair away from the table, napkin falling from his lap without concern. "I will not invest in a company built on theft." He left without dessert, without a handshake, without a single backward glance. The front door closed with a finality that echoed all the way into the basement. And for the first time since this war began, I heard real fear in my son's voice. The civil court building was colder than the winter morning outside, but my hands did not shake when Vanessa led me through the hallway. For the first time in decades, I did not feel small. I did not feel like a burden. I felt like someone who finally had proof in her hands, not just memories. "Stay close to me," Vanessa said softly. "You are not alone in this." I nodded, my breath steady. When we stepped into the courtroom, I saw Jason already seated with his attorney. He wore a dark suit that made him look respectable, responsible, almost heroic, if you did not know the truth. Hannah sat stiffly beside him, eyes darting at me with thinly veiled hatred. The judge entered, and everyone rose. When we sat again, Jason transformed himself instantly into the role he had rehearsed for weeks. The devoted son carrying an impossible burden. His voice was soft, controlled, dripping with false concern. "My mother is struggling mentally," he said. "We have done our best to care for her. She requires supervision, and we provide it at great personal expense." His attorney added, "We believe, Your Honor, that she has been manipulated into believing she holds rights she never possessed." "She is confused." Vanessa waited, hands folded. Then she stood with the calm precision of someone who knew she held the winning card. "Your Honor," she began, "allow me to present Exhibit A." She placed photographs on the evidence screen, photos Jason thought no one would ever see. The basement walls, the concrete floor, the thin collapsed mattress, the blankets more suited for a stray dog than a 76-year-old woman. A murmur swept through the courtroom. "Please note," Vanessa continued evenly, "that this is where Mr. Harrington required his mother to sleep." Jason stiffened. Hannah's jaw locked. Vanessa was not finished. "Exhibit B," she said. "A written statement from Oliver Harrington, age 9, confirming that he asked his grandmother, 'Why do you not have a bed?' and heard his father reply, 'She does not need one.'" Oliver was not brought into court. Vanessa insisted he be protected. His written statement was enough. The judge's gaze sharpened. That was when Vanessa delivered the blow. Exhibit C. Business registrations, trademarks, copyrights, QR coding metadata, and correspondence proving that Mrs. Sonia Langley is the original, legal, and sole registrant of the intellectual property used to build the Harrington brand. The courtroom went still. And then, the judge turned to Jason. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "where exactly does your mother sleep?" Jason should have prepared an answer. Instead, arrogance did what truth could not. "In the basement," he said, frustrated. "She does not need a bed. She barely moves." Every sound in the room stopped at once. A woman in the back gasped softly. Someone else muttered something that sounded like "unbelievable." Hannah shifted in her seat, like she wished she could disappear. Even their attorney lowered his eyes, as if unwilling to be seen beside such a sentence. The judge slowly turned to me. "Mrs. Langley," she asked gently, "is that true?" I kept my voice steady. "I sleep where they put me, Your Honor. On the floor, on a mattress that sinks to the concrete." There was no tremble in my voice, no bitterness, just truth, spoken plainly and without fear. Vanessa approached again with a final stack of evidence. "Your Honor, these documents show that the brand Harrington Harvest 44 is built entirely on intellectual property belonging to Mrs. Langley, formulas, trademarks, and registrations she created, filed, and maintained. We have also submitted an email sent by Mr. Harrington to an investor, claiming his father created everything, despite substantial proof that Mrs. Langley is the legal and creative origin of the brand." The judge lifted the documents, reading with care. Then she looked at Jason not as a judge, but as a disappointed witness to cruelty. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "this court finds that the intellectual property in question legally belongs to your mother. Furthermore, The treatment described here, forcing an elderly woman to sleep on concrete, is extremely concerning and speaks volumes about your credibility. Hannah's hand flew to her mouth. Jason's shoulders collapsed inward. The judge delivered the final verdict like the closing of a heavy door. "You claim she does not need a bed," she said with cold clarity. "This court strongly disagrees," she continued, each sentence sealing their fate. "You will immediately cease all use of her formulas, branding, and related materials. You will compensate her for unauthorized use. And this court is forwarding the matter of your treatment of your mother to Adult Protective Services for review." I felt something inside me settle, a quiet, anchored strength I had not felt since Thomas was alive. For years, they erased my name. Today, the court wrote it back in ink. When the verdict came down, it was as if the house itself shifted. The air felt different, lighter, as if the walls finally recognized my name again. Jason and Hannah returned from court in silence that evening. Each step heavy with consequences they still believed they could outrun. But the consequences are patient. They wait for the guilty to sit still. Within 48 hours, the state issued the formal notice. It did not all fall in a single day, but the unraveling was swift, faster than any lie could be repaired. The company's operating license was suspended pending investigation. Their distribution partners froze shipments. Vendors demanded refunds. And then the investor they had lied to, Mr. Collins, filed his own suit, accusing them of concealing legal risk and misrepresenting ownership. The brand that Jason claimed he built from scratch crumbled faster than he ever imagined. He tried calling suppliers, shouting through the phone, insisting it was all temporary. But a business held up by stolen foundations falls the moment the rightful owner steps forward. At home, more letters arrived, this time addressed to me. Some were from the state, some from the bank, some from agencies I had not heard from in years. They all said the same thing. I was a legal stakeholder. I had been all along. The land beneath the house, the land Thomas once used as collateral, had reverted to my name the moment the court acknowledged my ownership. Suddenly, the place where I had been pushed into the basement was mine again, from the roof to the soil beneath it. And I did not throw them out, not immediately. Mercy, when delivered slowly, teaches better than rage. Instead, I drafted a letter with Vanessa's help. It stated, simply and politely, that if they wished to continue living in the home, they would be required to pay rent, not symbolic rent, not discounted family rent. Market rent plus 3 times the value for the space they had used without legal right for years, and a retroactive fee for occupying property they had attempted to seize. Hannah read the letter first. I heard the paper trembling in her hands. Jason snatched it from her and read it twice, his breath growing louder with each line. "We cannot pay this," he muttered, as if the universe might agree. The universe stayed silent. 2 days later, they packed. Not neatly, not gracefully. Boxes slammed, doors banged. Accusations flew from room to room. Hannah cried once, not for what she had done, but for what she had lost. When they left, the house became quiet in a way that felt like clearing fog. I walked upstairs for the first time without asking permission. The master bedroom door was open. Sunlight fell across the wood floor, illuminating a space I had not stepped into since Thomas was alive. I felt a tremor in my chest, grief, nostalgia, relief, all tangled together. I ordered a bed that afternoon, a sturdy, beautiful one with a firm mattress and a quilt in warm colors. When it arrived, I watched the movers set it up like someone witnessing a small resurrection. Later that week, Oliver visited. He ran straight to the bedroom, hopped onto the mattress, and laughed as the springs bounced beneath him. "Grandma, you finally have a bed," he said, smiling wide enough to light the whole hallway. I sat beside him and smoothed his hair. "Not just a bed, sweetheart," I said. "I have my place back." His smile softened into something tender, something understanding. Children see truths, adults pretend are invisible. Hannah tried one last time. She sent an email filled with long, winding apologies, paragraphs about misunderstanding, exhaustion, the stress of running a business, and a plea to reset our relationship. I replied with a single photograph, the mattress lying on the concrete basement floor, and one sentence beneath it: This is how you believed I deserved to live. Now you may learn how to live without what I built." She never wrote again. Jason waited longer. When he finally called, his voice was thin, brittle. "I was angry," he said. "I felt like you never believed in me." I let the silence stretch before answering. "I believed in your potential," I said, "not in your greed." He swallowed hard. "Can we fix this?" I spoke gently, not cruelly. "You may fix yourself, that is all." I did not slam the door, I simply closed it to the width of what was safe. Months passed. The house grew warm again. I repainted the kitchen, reorganized the pantry, placed Thomas's framed photo back on the mantel where it belonged. One morning, Mr. Thomas Collins came by with a proposal. He wanted to help relaunch the original brand on a smaller, honest scale, locally sourced, community-centered, integrity first. I agreed, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted legacy, the real kind, the kind untouched by lies. The new business did not make millions. It did not have to. It made dignity. It made truth. The local paper wrote an article titled, "The Grandmother Whose Recipes Were Stolen, and How She Took Them Back." I framed it and hung it near the kitchen door, not as a trophy, as a reminder that silence is not the same as defeat. With the first profits, I created the Sonia and Thomas Foundation, a small fund to help older women abandoned by their families, especially those manipulated out of their property or forced into degrading living conditions. I wanted no one else to sleep on concrete because someone younger decided they were no longer useful. On a quiet evening near spring, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. Oliver rested his head on my shoulder, humming softly. The air smelled of warm grass and the faint sweetness of something blooming. My feet touched a soft rug. My back rested against a supportive cushion. And my room was just inside the door, waiting for me with clean sheets and a real bed. I closed my eyes and let the warmth fill me. "There was a time," I said to Oliver, "when I slept on a cold floor and thought it might be the end of me." He looked up at me, eyes wide. "But you are here," he whispered. I smiled. "Yes," I said, "I am." And then, with a voice low and steady, shaped by everything I had survived, I spoke the truth that had carried me through the darkest nights. "The day you asked why I did not have a bed, your father said I did not need one. But the judge disagreed, and life itself disagreed. It turns out the thing I never needed was not the bed. It was the children who forgot who their mother truly was. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you." Stories like mine are not just tales of sorrow or survival. They are reminders that every grandmother, every aging woman tucked away and forgotten, still carries a spine made of steel and a heart that refuses to dim. Justice may come late, but it comes all the same. And if my voice, my journey, or my fight for dignity touched you even a little, I hope you will join our growing family. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, a place where the unheard finally speak, where the overlooked finally rise, and where justice, no matter how old or fragile it may look, always finds its way home. Thank you for listening, sweetheart. I'll see you in the next story.